Welcome to the Bookers Alliance podcast, where we hold the pencil and the pencil is power. Coming at you right now is your host, Marky Mark, along with the man, the myth, the legend, Frank Donaldson. Join us as we discuss the ever-changing landscape of professional wrestling. So hang on tight, you jabronis, and enjoy the ride. Hey, welcome in, everybody. Thank you for joining today's episode of the Bookers Alliance podcast. Today's episode, we're going to have a little bit of a wild ride. What you think, Frank?
All right. Well, I'm excited to see it. You know, change is good, they say. I hear a lot of words, a lot of talk about change is good. So looks like we're going to have to change up some stuff now. We're 50 episodes in. I think it's time for a change.
Time for a change. Let's make some things a little different. Let's shake it up a little bit. Sometimes shake-ups are good.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, in the real world in WWE, you know, there's been a lot of shake-ups, but whew. All right, well, I digress.
All right, so today's episode topic, we're going to call it New Horizons When Styles Clash.
All right.
All right, so let's get some of the business out of the way first. So first off, I want to say thank you to everybody who's been listening to us through the 50 episodes plus so far. And we thought about some things, and we want to try a different avenue of bringing the podcast to you every week with some different flavors. So we're talking about moving to a different format. We're going to do a one-a-week format. Going to talk about dropping potentially on Friday mornings around, early mornings and Fridays.
We want to drive with y'all to work. We want, when you're on the way to work in the morning or you're settling in to get ready to start your Friday, turn us on. Let us get in the car with you. Put us in the back. Instead of you pulling up a ringside seat, let us pull up a back seat with you. We'll sit in the back and talk to you for a little bit. Talk a little wrestling on Friday morning.
Now, if you got a hoopty, I don't want to see no pickles or Skittles or none of that. Like
I'm going to have to drive that car. Maybe we'll just ride behind you and we'll talk on a bullhorn real loud or something. Yeah, we ain't trying to get in nobody's back trash back seat.
No tinted back window with a bubble in the middle, none of that.
Right. No back seat with a tire in it, or the old school ways where your transmissions go. We see the floor through the floorboard. No, we ain't trying to ride in them back seats.
All right, so we're gonna start changing some things up. Look forward to that. A little bit different format to the flow as well. Maybe spending the first 15 minutes with y'all talking about what's happening in the world of professional wrestling, and then moving into our topic that we decide to talk about for the week. Looks like it's gonna be an interesting change. Definitely interested to get your thoughts and opinions on it. So as we go through these changes, reach out on our social media platforms, drop us a line. If we're doing something you like, let us know. If we're doing something you don't like, let us know. We definitely looking to improve and grow in what we're doing here with the podcast.
Yeah, you can definitely let us know, but just keep in mind, if you let us know something on Thursday, we may come for you that Friday morning. So if you have an opinion or topic or something, try and get it in by Wednesday, right? Because if you hit us on a Thursday, we're coming for you on that Friday morning. So you don't want to be the person in your car on the way to work, and then you hear the Bookers Alliance yelling at you specifically through your speakers. You don't want to be that person. So come on and enjoy us on there. But yeah, give us topics, give us conversation pieces. If you hate what we're doing, I dare you to come for us for that. But if you love what we're doing, tune in, listen in, give us feedback, all that stuff. We want to be interactive. We want to enjoy. We want to be with y'all and the people. Like I say, we want you to feel like we're in the car with you on Friday morning, ending your work week, because we ain't trying to do it on Monday morning. Ain't nobody wake enough to listen to us yet. So Friday on the way to work, or if you listen to Steve Harvey in the morning or something like that, let us ride on home with you. Stop at the bar on the way home, take the Bookers Alliance in there, buy a drink for us. That's how we do.
Hey, I do like my whiskey now. So
exactly.
You buy me around.
We're still trying to get that. We're still trying to get that sponsorship.
Yeah.
So if y'all listen to us on the way home from work, around 4:30, it's 5 o'clock somewhere coming up. Stop in, have a whiskey on us. Then go to our social media. Tell us what whiskey we drank with you. Sounds good to me.
All right. So that new format change will be coming up within the next few weeks. Look out for it. Hopefully, it'll be exciting. It'll be a good change. But we're going to get into our topic for today that we want to talk about. And this topic, it can be everybody, it can be a different cup of tea for everybody. But we want to talk about styles of wrestling. What was, your favorite style growing up? What's your favorite style on TV now, the current products? What style do you just absolutely just do not like and just have a disdain for.
Wait, what? That's what we're talking. You said Styles clash, dude. I've been over here searching on this tablet for 15 minutes. AJ Styles finishing moves and the different variations of like when he does it off the middle rope sometimes, and when remember when Michelle McCool was doing it and she called it a different thing. Or I sat over here looking all this stuff up, and you mean to tell me we're talking about wrestling styles? Oh hell!
So
Friday morning, here we go.
So look, at least you're an AJ Styles super fan now. I mean,
yeah, I'm well versed on his finisher, so yeah, I definitely know how his match would end. But damn, okay, well, go ahead and kick us into that while I go over here and search some more information so we can figure out exactly what the hell we're talking about today. All right, good Friday morning, y'all. Hello, how you doing?
All right, so we talking about these different wrestling styles. And so I'm going to kick it off with a style that I grew up on, that I kind of honed my craft on, so to speak, as far as being a wrestling fan. So I grew up in 80s, 90s era wrestling. As far as looking at WWE, to me, these dudes in WWE were comic book characters. That's kind of how I viewed everything in that world. But back in the 80s, everybody had a job.
Yep.
You had a garbage man. You had a tax man.
Occupational gimmicks, they call it. Good
right.
Lord.
Right. Everybody had a job.
Repo man.
Had
to have something to do. Abe Knuckleball Schwartz was a baseball player. Brooklyn Brawler was a bum. I mean, yeah, everybody had a damn occupational gimmick.
Right.
That don't work in today's world because, damn it, the last thing I want to do when I'm watching my wrestling is think about the work I just got off of. So, yeah, no, those gimmicks are out of the door, please. But, yeah, I'm with you on that.
So that's kind of how I viewed the WWE. Now, don't get me wrong. I loved the WWE growing up. I wasn't a huge Hogan fan, but, Undertaker, I loved Brett, Shawn Michaels, things like that growing up. In the 90s era, it kind of turned into a little bit more of an edgier product. It got a little bit more.
Because Edge was there.
Edge was there.
Adam Copeland. So, yeah, okay. I'm with you on that. That makes sense.
So I started liking that product a little bit more. But for me, the style that I grew up in was the old NWA style. You had your brawlers, your realism. That's the style that I grew up in.
So what that translates to is old Southern wrestling.
Old Southern wrestling.
Old Southern wrestling. Okay, let's call it what it is. Old Southern wrestling.
So your Ric Flair, your Dusty Rhodes, your Arn Anderson, your Tully Blanchard, your Sting, your Lex Luger. The list goes on and on. But the Road Warriors, that's where I grew up in. I looked at it more as these dudes. Or if living in the Charlotte area, could I roll up in Charlotte, roll into the Hyatt and see Ric Flair? Absolutely.
Yeah,
definitely could. Actually, legit could have. I mean, that's no lie. That was the place that he used to frequent in the Charlotte area. But for me, though,
let's talk about why he lived in Charlotte. Why was he at these posh hotels? His wife and kids were at home at the house in Charlotte. No. Why would he be at a?
You can't be styling and profiling with the ladies at home.
Sorry, that's true.
Sorry, kids. I'm gonna put this out there. Like the old saying goes, you don't shit where you sleep.
Well, there you go. Rick said he lived the gimmick, so I mean, you can't live the gimmick at home. So
correct.
Okay, so all right, keep going.
so I like that. The fact that these guys were the everyday hero or the everyday villain or the everyday person you wanted to be.
Yep.
That's the kind of style that I grew up on.
Yep.
For me, seeing these two big hosses come down to the ring with spikes on their shoulders and looking with war paint on their face, and I'm going, damn, where did these dudes come out of? Mad Max? Like, what is
straight
this?
Out of Mad Max?
Like, what is this?
Absolutely.
Looking at Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and going, dude, that's like Bruce Lee protege. That's like,
yeah.
And then looking at Ric Flair with the Rolexes and the limousines, Dusty with the cowboy boots and the bull ropes and the cowboy, like stuff like that. That's kind of what I cut my teeth on. That style of wrestling to me was real.
Yeah,
I
can see that.
It wasn't the IRS versus
versus. That's not too far away from my current job right now. So, oh my God, now we're back to these occupational gimmicks. Ugh, good Lord.
But it wasn't IRS versus the Repo Man. It was
No, they were a tag team because like IRS would repo them, so he would send repo out,
Right.
and the $1 Million Man would keep the tax man on
There
the
you
books.
go.
So
But it
know,
was-
finagle the books around. Yeah, those were like occupational gimmicks that all worked together.
But it was like the Rock and Roll Express versus the Midnight Express.
Yeah.
It was, it was Arn Anderson going out there and just bulldozing everybody.
Yeah.
Just, and to me, it was a more real style of wrestling.
Yeah, so it definitely was for old school Southern wrestling.
Right.
I give you that. Now, of course, I had a different, platform that I was raised on because being from the Chicago area, I had more of that Northern style, that WWE wrestling, and
Right.
then being a little bit older than you, I kind of like how you said the WWE characters were comic book characters. When I was a kid, those comic book characters were superheroes to me. So I didn't look at them as, oh, that's just some random comic book. Hulk Hogan was the equivalent of the Incredible Hulk, things like that. Those characters were big, they were colorful, they were larger than life. They were what you want to be, if you had superpowers, that's what you would look like, like the kids look at Iron Man and the Avengers today. That's kind of how the wrestlers were back in the day. I mean, you had, again, Hulk Hogan, Junkyard Dog. Junkyard Dog, if you were a young black teenager, or not even a teenager, a little kid growing up, you look at Junkyard Dog like, wait a minute, there ain't a whole lot of black folks in here. There ain't nobody that looks like me on this wrestling thing.
Right.
But then here's this dude, he's out there talking about grabbing them cakes and he's swinging a chain and he's up there doing his dance. And you're like, man, that's a cool dude right there. So, it just kind of, you gave you that superhero character that, because again, when you would go to the events, like you said, you would see him in the hotels and all that. Well, we didn't see him like that. We saw him in the ring. They came down, made that big grand entrance, rock and roll playing. And you look at them guys, and I mean, they were just so much larger than life than, you look at the guy right next to you, or at the time, I would look at my dad. My dad was a big, he was a big, strong guy. So I would say, damn, Daddy, you look like Junkyard Dog. You get in there with Junkyard Dog. Y'all whoop some tail in there. And my dad, of course, would be like, yeah, we would. And, he wouldn't say them 6'5" guys. My dad was all of 5'7". He wouldn't say them 6'4", 6 foot guys would go in there and throw him around. And my dad said, oh, yeah, no, if I went in there with Junkyard Dog, we'd definitely whoop some tail. That would just be what it is. But, yeah, I mean, and then like Macho Man, like you had Macho Man. He was a smaller character, in stature, but he was so colorful. He did,
Right.
And he just looked like he was a star. I mean, these guys look like superstars before WWE started terming the term superstars.
Right.
They always appeared like that. Like, again, they were bigger than life. Like you said about Ric Flair with the Rolexes and you had that on your channel. I had the $1 Million Man on my channel.
Right.
The $1 Million Man walked around with a gold and diamond belt. He had a gold plated suit. I mean, he had the swimming pools, all the things that Ric Flair said he had, $1 Million Man showed you he had. So for a kid, being a visual child, you're looking at it like, there it is. Like you had Sting. Okay, Sting was doing. On my channel, I had the Ultimate Warrior with that music. The music that got you all fired up. I mean, you're running around your living room like the Ultimate Warrior, shaking the couch pillows and all that. So it was just the presentation. It was geared toward kids. And in that time of, my life, being that age, I mean, it was ideal for me. Like I said, it was one of those where you just look up at the star and your jaw just drops and you say, oh my God, look how big he is. Or you see him in the ring, Dad, look at how strong that guy is. It was just the presentation of it. And that's what, like you said, that's what I cut my teeth on was that. That's what enamored me in the whole thing. It was just, like I said, we've talked about it before. My first match that I saw was Hulk Hogan winning the title.
Right.
And then you see this big, huge guy holding this big, shiny belt up and, he's the champ and everybody's celebrating him. And I'm like, man, I want to win. I want to be the champ. I want everybody to love me and adore me. And oh my God, I want Andre the Giant to pour champagne over my head. I want all this stuff. How do I get this stuff? And then Vince McMahon would end the show with, if you want to see what happens next, tune in next week. And now you're watching again next week. Before you know it, you love it. So
yep. Yeah, I mean, obviously those two different styles. And in no way, shape, or form are we saying that one is better than the other.
No, it's just what we prefer when we grew up
growing
on.
up. I mean, that's what we grew up on. We cut our teeth on it as wrestling fans. So let's progress the conversation in instead of talking about what we grew up on, let's talk about what we are a fan of today as far as a style of wrestling. Now, for me, what I love out of today's products, it's the stories. That's what captivates me today. That's why the story of the Bloodline, love that story. It's just an amazing piece of, we've said in the past, literature. It's a literary work. It's a novel that they're writing.
Yep.
It's Emmy award-winning TV that they should be nominated
Somewhere
for.
in the area of a 7-piece act, as they call it. Instead of
Right.
a typical 3-piece act, this is a 7-piece act
Right.
because they can take it wherever it needs to go.
So I am a literary nerd. I love anything to do with Shakespeare. But when I look at, what's been happening with the Bloodline, it's got all of the intrigue. It's got the betrayal. It's got the the swerves. It's got everything.
Got everything you need.
Everything I need in there. Not leaving out AEW, the storyline that's going on right now between MJF and Adam Cole. I love where that's at because you don't know which one of them is going to stab the other one in the back.
You know it's coming.
You know it's coming, but you just don't
win.
know which
Right.
one.
When and who's it going to be?
Who's it going to be?
Well, the injury bug stabbed him in the back the other day because
Unfortunately.
MJF took one in the ring. Adam Cole took one running to the ring. Nobody came out of that match unscathed.
No.
Everybody left Dynamite this past Wednesday. Everyone left hurt in one way or another. John Moxley's still dead. I mean, them guys got real hurt that day, and we'll get to that. But leading in, that's what I don't like about today's wrestling. But I digress. I'll lead till we get there.
But other stories that I've become fond of, the Yes Movement, Daniel Bryan.
Yep.
Holy crap! The fact that this dude was held down by management, and was like, I can't do what I want to do because management's holding me back, and the fans are like, screw management.
Yeah.
We want to see you here.
And if we have to take over every show until they do something with you, we just will.
The Yes Movement, all of those fans in the ring, whether that was staged or not, don't
doesn't matter.
care. Doesn't
Point
matter.
of it is the audience that was watching it was completely bought into it. So.
Amazing story there.
And we know they didn't buy out every seat in the arena. Only Tony Khan buys over 10,000 tickets to make a sale. But.
Right. Other stories, Omega and Ospreay.
Yep.
Holy crap, the story that they're telling. So when I also say story, I don't want to just kind of pin it to stuff that happens backstage or promos.
Yeah.
You can tell a story with the match as well. The story that Ospreay and Omega is painting is they are like for like. They are Alpha A-1. I mean,
those two are real good example because they have to tell their story more in the ring,
right?
Because they're both not great promos. I mean, they're not going to get in the back and do Roman Reigns-esque bloodline storyline stuff in the back. They're not going to do that. But what they can do for that maybe 2 minutes of talking before they get in the match, and then when that bell rings, I mean, they're going to take you on a roller coaster when that bell rings. So yeah, that's a real good example.
So for me, I don't care how the story is being told, whether it is mentally, whether it is verbally, or whether it is physically. The story is what I'm after. That's what keeps me hooked right now as a wrestling fan, because I've read The Old Man and the Sea. I've read Romeo and Juliet. I have not read from cover to cover the story of the Bloodline yet. No. It's yet to be written. It's
yet to be written. So we're still waiting to see how.
Still hanging on to see how this all finishes out.
Yep.
If it finishes out, it may not finish.
Yeah, I mean,
it may just terminate on a cliffhanger, and that's all you get.
Or from what we saw last week, it may go a little bit higher than where Roman Reigns is right now.
Who gave the order?
There may be a higher Samoan chief.
Who
out
gave
there
the order?
That's
all I'm gonna say.
Paul Heyman wants to know who gave the order. He don't know. But I know who was in the building that day. So if somebody could have gave it, and there's only one person that can legitimately say, I'm the tribal chief of this family. If somebody was going to give the order, I would say it would probably be that guy. But we're not going to speak of that guy's name because we don't want to jinx nothing. We did that last year and it didn't happen.
But that's it for me in today's product. Tell me a story. It can be a lucha libre story. It can be a women's match story. It can be a story for the Intercontinental Belt. Beautiful story that Chad Gable and Gunther just told.
Yep.
Beautiful story. Loved every bit of it.
Yep.
That's what keeps me hanging on in the style that I love for today.
I definitely concur. I mean, that's a great part of it's been a great part of wrestling as far back as I can remember, but it definitely, in WWE terms, kicked off with the Mega Powers. But that leads me to kind of my style that I like of wrestling. And again, it's happened forever. It's just the way they do it currently is really what sells me, but it's factions, it's groups. When they come out with a good faction that has a good story to tell, I mean, it's the best model of getting people over, that's been invented, and it stand the test of time. Think about the Four Horsemen, way back in where you were talking about, where you were watching. Four Horsemen. Would Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, would they be household names today had it not been for the Four Horsemen?
No, I dare say not.
But it wasn't like Ric Flair was elevating them. It was the fact that they were associated with the group.
Yeah.
It was just that. NWO. Let's talk about that. I mean, everybody in the NWO had the potential to be, the three guys, Scott, Hall, Kevin Nash, and Hulk. All three of them had potential to be main eventers in and of themselves. They didn't need that group to do it. But look at what they've done by making that group. Their names are etched in wrestling history in a way that Hulk's would have been, but Nash and Hall's would not have been without an NWO group. The business as a whole wouldn't be what it is today without the NWO.
Agreed.
So that was, that was a mechanism to advance the business as a whole another level. Evolution in WWE, when they do, what they did there, you took Randy Orton and Batista, who were like, both of them got great looks, but who?
Yeah.
Why? Batista was a damn deacon the week before. Randy Orton looked like a 12-year-old.
All you kept hearing about Randy was, he's a generational talent.
Yeah, third generation. Well, hell, Rock was third generation. And that gimmick was gone already. So, it kind of was what it was. You put them in Evolution, now you package them in that group, everybody looks, like $1 million all of a sudden. Even to where you just said, the Bloodline. In the Bloodline, I mean, Jimmy and Jey Uso, tag team specialists. That was about as far as they were going to go, though. They could have been one of the greatest tag teams ever. Nowhere else they could go. Now you got them completely separate, both main event in their respective shows, one on SmackDown, one on Raw, because of what they did graduating up through the Bloodline.
Right. They
wouldn't have been main event, and there'd be no main event Jey Uso at all had it not been for that. They would have been tag team champion Jey Uso, period.
Yeah.
But, same like you said about AEW. I mean, they're delving into a lot of factions right now. And it's elevating guys.
Yeah.
You got Sammy Guevara and Chris Jericho just wrestled on Dynamite here recently. Sammy Guevara, who?
Yeah.
4 years ago, he was like, why? Again, he looked like the prototypical. He was Austin Theory. He was Grayson Waller.
Yep.
He was a dozen other wrestling names I could bring out. They got him over there too. Ricky Starr. All them guys look alike. If you put them in a lineup, none of them are standing out for any particular reason other than they're athletic. They're all athletic. You know what I mean? Every name I just said is equally athletic. But you got Sammy Guevara, who can main event because he's saddled to a faction with Chris Jericho. All of a sudden, that puts him head and shoulders above these other people because he's headlining with a made star. That's what makes him. So, yeah, as far as then, now, and forever together is factions. When factions are together, they make wonderful mechanisms to advance people. And I think that's something that'll always stand the test of time in the wrestling business is simply that.
Yeah, I think back to some of the factions, like you pointed out, NWO, you pointed out Evolution, Nation of Domination.
Yeah.
Dude, Nation, as far as with D'Lo, Mark Henry.
Yeah.
Dude, they would have been nobodies.
No, absolutely not. Hell, The Rock was on his. I mean, they hated The Rock.
Yeah.
Everyone hated The Rock until he got packaged in with the Nation.
Yep.
That was supposed to be a faction simply for Farouk.
Yeah.
And let's call a spade here, and a bunch of other black dudes, right? Because we ain't had nothing else to do with it. We're gonna package them all in there together, call it one.
Right.
All those guys, short of D'Lo Brown, everybody else that touched the Nation is now a Hall of Famer.
Yep.
None of those. Mark Henry was on his way out. And Mark Henry had been in the company 3 years at that point, had a huge contract, and they weren't getting any ROI on that. There's no return of investment on Mark Henry. He was a wash up. They were already, you know, he was a draft day bust, basically.
I think even Mark has gone on record as saying, like, as far as back then, him getting in there was the best thing that could have happened to him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because Ron Simmons kind of put him under his wing and said, hey, man, some of the stuff you acting a fool backstage about and all this other crap, you need to kind of put that on ice.
You want to talk about some drama? Think about had they not had Ahmed Johnson feud with them. Think about if they had put Ahmed in that group.
Yep.
Ahmed Johnson wouldn't have been the Ahmed Johnson we know today, who's out here saying so much outlandish stuff. I mean, I saw somebody said the other day, Ahmed Johnson's like the alternative version of Hulk Hogan with all the tall tales he's telling. They're like, you know, these guys live in a completely different universe that really didn't exist, but they live there.
Yeah.
Ultimate Warrior used to live there. I mean, you know, Sid Justice used to live. A lot of them crazy dudes live there. Ahmed Johnson's living there right now. He sees the whole world in a different way than what actually happened.
Right.
But had he got into the Nation instead of feuding with the Nation, he might have had that same, you know, advancement that Mark Henry had. He may be something today. You know, he may be a name that we look forward to talking about instead of just joke fodder. Stuff like that. But it just, you know, again, a good faction can take, you know, those guys we want to get something out of, but we can't figure out how to get something out of. You put them with the right amount, you know, with the right group of people, they'll figure it out. You know, you didn't creative. We just had a lot of releases in WWE today. What was the first thing you said when we were talking about releases? Couldn't they have put those guys in a faction somewhere?
Yeah.
Just to, you know, and figured out something for them creatively. Yeah. If you would have took one veteran and put over, let's say, 3 of those guys that got released today. Hell, Dolph Ziggler, he was one of the releases.
Yeah.
You could have took him and, let's say, Madcap Moss or Riddick Moss or whatever you want to call him, and, you know, a couple other people. You could have found a way to get them in a faction, get them involved in something, you know, let them feud with the Judgment Day. Judgment Day, all they did for a long time was just lose.
Yeah.
You could have put those guys in a different faction and let Judgment Day win if you were going to back Judgment Day. Don't you know, you leave those guys sitting there catering where you could be creating something for them in these factions, where you lean on the veteran support and say, hey, I've been traveling up and down the roads with these guys, and we work out with those guys. You know those guys.
Yeah.
Creative don't know these guys. I mean, they know their top star. They know Roman. They can write stuff for Roman all day long. It's real easy. But what are you writing for Emma? You don't know Emma. What are you writing for Aaliyah?
Let's be honest with something, though, real quick. Creative ain't wrote nothing for Roman, though, in a long time.
No, creative is Paul.
Paul,
I think Paul and Roman get on the phone, kind of like we do this podcast. I think they get on the phone, they come up with something, and they're like, "That's gold," and they send it down to them. It's like, you know, it's like old baseball play. Hey, Popsky, send it in. Yeah. That's really it on that. You know, and Popsky sends in the play, and Roman and them go out there and execute it how they dreamed up. And creative is just really fortunate that it's happening. Yeah. So.
All right. So that's our talk about as far as what we're liking about today. Now we're going to throw curveball. We're going to flip the other side of the coin. Let's talk about what we don't like about, you know, whether it was something we grew up on, something that's in today's, you know, whatever. For me, I was never a fan of the deathmatch style, the backyard wrestling style.
Yeah.
I was never a fan. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't get it twisted. I liked ECW. I liked it because it was something completely different than what I saw with WWE or WCW.
Yeah.
It was completely different. I would sit up at night and wait until 1, 2 a.m. on a Saturday morning.
That's when that would come on.
To watch ECW. So I don't want people to get it twisted. I'm not saying that I'm not a fan of that style, that hardcore style. I am a fan of that. But it has to be done with, like I said, a story.
Yeah.
Tommy Dreamer Raven. One of the best stories to ever come out of ECW. Yeah. Loved the Tommy Dreamer Raven storyline. Loved it. I loved the Taz Bam Bam Bigelow storyline.
Okay.
That was crazy as hell. Anything the Dudleys got into with New Jack. Holy crap. Some amazing stuff came out of that.
Okay.
But don't put 2 guys in a match with light tubes, tacks, tables, barbed wire, and other
Is that a
kind of
match?
Shit. No, it's not a match.
Is that a brawl?
It's a
I mean, I wouldn't even call that a brawl.
no. It's like a meeting of two people that just want to just beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah, it's destruction for the sake of destruction.
Hey.
I mean,
And that's why I don't like the style. It doesn't mean anything to me.
yeah,
Now, wrap up a few things in it, and we change the game. That strap match that we just watched between Bryan Danielson and Ricky Starks.
yeah,
That strap match. That wasn't supposed to be Bryan Danielson. We all know that. That was supposed to be Punk.
yeah.
That's where that was supposed to go.
But it so worked out that it was Bryan Daniels. So that match would have been for complete trash. That would have been complete trash if it had been Punk.
Look at the violence, though, that happened in that match.
Yeah.
Granted, was there a huge wine build story 6 months, building up to that? No, there wasn't. It was Bryan filling in for Punk against Ricky Starks. But Bryan took that, flipped it for a minute, and was like, you know what? I see the potential in you, but you ain't come up against anything like me.
Yeah.
Let's put this on display, and let's see if you still have it.
So pick up on what you just said there, though. The specific word that you used was violence. Violence is different than destruction.
Okay.
Violence for the sake of violence is wrestling.
Yep.
All of wrestling is violent, right? Like it ain't ballet. We know that going in. All of wrestling is violent. So the people who tune in want to see violence. I mean, same as you watch MMA. You tune in, but what you don't want to see is destruction.
I didn't have to sit there and watch Chris Jericho's forehead get bladed open in person with a damn pizza cutter.
That was destruction for the sake of destruction, and there's no use for that.
Right.
So, and that's what I say. That's the difference in the words you use. Violence is wrestling. Violence is MMA. Yep. Destruction is, if we go outside right now, I could literally, pick up a brick and throw it at you and, crack your skull open. That's destruction. That's, that's not violence at that point. That's a level beyond violence, and that's not what you tune into wrestling for.
Right.
If you want to see that, you can watch the news. Let's be honest.
It's true.
Destruction is on the news every night, 10 o'clock. You're going to get a half hour to an hour of it every day if that's your appetite. But if you want to watch violence, control violence, that's boxing, that's wrestling, that's MMA. It's violent, but it's not, nobody's going to die at the end of it. Yeah. We want to see a sport. Wrestling, you want your violence to come in the activity of football.
Yeah.
Football is violent.
That's one of the reasons why I love football. Right.
And God, anybody who's listening that's cringy, close your ears right now because I'm going to say it.
I know where you're going.
Everybody knows where I'm going right now. When you saw that replay of Nick Chubb the other day, you don't want to see that because that was destruction.
That was horrible.
Hear what I'm saying? That was destruction because that man's leg is destroyed. Yep. You don't want to see that, but when Nick Chubb puts his shoulder down and runs through a guy and they make a big tackle, that's violence. You're into that. You want to see that, but you don't want to see that man's leg turn like a spaghetti strand.
At the end of the day, I'm not naive enough to sit back and go, well, they get a paycheck. And I'm also not naive enough to go, oh well, they know what they signed up for.
Yeah,
it's for me. Even some of the stuff John Moxley's been doing late.
Yep.
Some of that stuff, I'm like, I don't need to see that.
Nope.
I don't need to see 100 shish kebab skewers rammed into this man's head. I don't want to see that. I don't care to.
And you know why? And I'll tell you a reason why. Bully Ray said he was once told in the locker room, from one of the older time wrestlers, one of the legends out there that said, all that's the crazy stuff you just did with them tables and them ladders and them chairs. He's like, man, that was good stuff. But as you get older, I just want you to remember your check's going to be the same as if you'd have did a hip toss.
Yep.
So at the end of the day, like you said, them guys, they know what they signed up for. They're getting a paycheck, blah, blah, blah. They get no more money for doing it. I mean, they're risking they're putting their bodies on the line farther than necessary to get the same money they would have done for a suplex.
But I will say this. So growing up as a wrestling fan, I was interested to see what that was all about. You have to figure out, like, is this for me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So going to Blockbuster, I'm tell my age, Blockbuster Video back in the day.
Blockbuster on Friday nights. Oh, yeah. That's a move.
So when you go at the Blockbuster, you go to the wrestling section for the videos, and you see Backyard Wrestling 2, Backyard Wrestling 3. You're like, what is this?
Yeah.
And of course,
it says wrestling. That keyword's there.
And then of course, young impressionable wrestling fan like me with major guns on the video, the cover.
Oh, hold on. That was in that back room that had a curtain hanging over it, right?
No, my Blockbuster didn't have a back room.
Okay, yeah. See,
even if they did, I'm not
in Chicago. We didn't only have Blockbuster to rent our videos. Well, you can rent them from anywhere, but some of them video houses had Family Video. Used to have that XXX, not for family video. Yeah.
But so taking those videos home, watching that, and then looking at it and going, why would anybody do this? Why would anybody take and break light tubes over each other?
Yeah.
Like it didn't make sense to me. And now again, that stuff was on a video that was Shock Jock, that was Howard Stern, Marilyn Manson type.
It was meant to be jarring.
Right. So. That's what that was. And I get it. And if you're a fan of that, not knocking you.
No.
That's what you like. I'm not. That's your cup of tea. That has
just ain't mine.
Yeah, it's never been my cup of tea. I've never liked that style of wrestling. I don't understand it. You put a good story behind it though, and you give me some of the reasons for the excessive violence.
Yeah, you got to have a real good storytelling mechanism though,
because it has to blow off somewhere.
Yeah. So they're just doing it on Saturday night. I mean,
right.
Every match is a death match in their GCW and all that.
Do I understand why the Undertaker threw Mick Foley off Hell in a Cell? No, I don't. I don't. I never will. I've heard the stories. I know why it was done. I know why Mick wanted to do it. I get all of that. Don't know if it necessarily ever had to happen though.
Yeah. So I'll differ. It had to happen once. Because if it doesn't happen once, then everybody's going to say it can always happen. And then you're going to have people that aren't as trained and not in the right scenario try and do it.
I get it.
So you have Undertaker and Mick Foley, two seasoned workers in a WWE environment where everything is somewhat safe.
Yep.
Now, granted, that wasn't safe, but it was still somewhat safe. You want them trying it before you want, Jack Johnson and Joe Blow trying to do it in some high school gym down the road, where they throw a guy off, he misses everything and, lands right on the barricade and skewers himself.
Yep.
So if it had to happen once, and it had to happen in WWE where the whole world could see.
I don't want to see it again, though.
Now, you don't have to see it again.
I don't want to see it again.
Now, so alternatively, I got, you started off saying you didn't want to get it twisted, because that was what you... That ECW stuff, I do want to get it twisted. I ain't like none of that.
That was the fan.
Hell, no, man, that ECW stuff, that was a grade above trash, right? That was all up in that area right there. It was like, like what the night before the garbage man comes, where you're like, sorting through, like, am I going to throw this away? Am I going to put this up somewhere? It was ECW was right up in there for me. Had it accidentally fell in the trash can on that day before garbage day, I wouldn't have lost no sleep. That would have popped right on in there, and I'd have been like, well, take that out with the baby. Take that out with the baby in the bathwater. That's a wrap. ECW could have never existed. When I listen to Busted Open now, and I listen to Tommy and damn Bully Ray, and every time they talk about anything that happens great in wrestling, they always somehow or another say, back in ECW, and as soon as they do that, I hear the whole world have a collective eye roll, like, oh, okay, God, ECW again. There's a reason y'all only lasted 8-9 years, because it was trash. It was not good. There were many good things out of it. I'll never shade another wrestling company because they provided jobs for wrestlers that wouldn't go get breaks in WWE unless they had ECW to kind of platform off of. So I'll never say ECW shouldn't have existed. I'll never say any of that. ECW put a lot of food on a lot of people's tables, and it got a lot of people TV exposure that they may have never gotten. It's got Bully Ray and Tommy and them. It's got them 20-some plus years in the business. All that's well and good. For my damn viewing pleasure, though, that was trash, and they could have kept all that in the can. The garbage can that they cracked over Sandman's head, they could have threw all that right on in there with it, and that would have been just as damn good with me. The Paul Heymans of the world, the cream always rises to the top. The guys like you mentioned earlier, like Bam Bam Bigelow, he went through WWE before he went to ECW. ECW was like a soft landing spot for him. Paul Heyman, soft landing spot for him. Shane Douglas, big ECW star, soft landing spot for him because he had a rough time in WWE, had to have a soft landing. ECW provided for a lot of people, so okay, great. The style of it, all the, that Sabu stuff that they used to do, while it looks awesome, I could have done without all that. Let me keep my wrestling in that, in that 12 by 24, whatever they call it. Keep it in the ring, do your stuff in there. Mat wrestling, off the top rope, a little bit of the barricade stuff. I'm just as happy with all that as the man in the moon. We start wandering off into the backstage and all that. I'm like, all right, once in a month or so, okay, one time a pay-per-view, if we wander off a little bit, okay, cool. Once we start going outside the building, I'd have tapped out. I'm like, oh, hell, put this back in the building. I'm sick of this. I don't like it.
So let me ask you this, though. So when that style started bleeding into the WWE, with things like the Hell in the Cells, with the Boiler Room Brawls, like, how did you feel about that?
So those were the dark days of wrestling for me because you
didn't like that either, huh?
No, because you had the Attitude Era. That was happening around so much good stuff in wrestling.
Right.
WCW tried their hardcore division. That was happening around the NWO. But we had alternative programming at that time. So take for example, when WWE would wander off into Boiler Room Brawls and whatnot, that's when I switch over to Nitro.
Really?
I would check out the Luchas over at Nitro. So I'm seeing, while you're watching, Mick Foley and Mankind, or Mick Foley and Terry Funk wrestling the New Age Outlaws and throwing each other into a dumpster, I'm over on the other channel watching Eddie Guerrero or Rey Mysterio have a mat classic. I'm over there watching Dean Malenko and Jushin Thunder Liger over there putting on a clinic. So because we had alternative styles, when WWE would wander off into something I didn't like, go watch WCW.
Okay.
When WCW would wander off into some of that nonsense they did, like the Dungeon of Doom and all of that. Now, hell, Dungeon of Doom comes on. Now it's time to flip that channel. I'm right back over in WWE. So because I had a different time of wrestling, I didn't have to wander off into that ECW. Now, I'd watch it because, again, I knew some of the characters. Like I said, some of those characters, they were soft landing spot for them. So I recognized some of the faces. So I'd watch it. I wouldn't intentionally stay up to, like you said, you'd intentionally stay up to 1 o'clock. I didn't intentionally do it. Now, if I wandered in at 1 o'clock drunk with a pizza in my hand and wrestling was on, yeah, I'll check it out, but I wasn't staying up for it. I mean, I wasn't at the, whoever I was dating at the time or living with, I wasn't like getting out of that bed with them to go watch some ECW. That wasn't happening. Now, Monday night, everything shut down for me. We were watching, the whole house was watching wrestling. If I'm dating a girl, she's watching wrestling or she's doing something else. But somehow or another wrestling's on. But yeah, Friday at 1 a.m., that wasn't my priority. So yeah, ECW I could have gone without it, but again, I do understand that it was a soft landing space for people that may or may not have been through the WWE or WCW system. So I'll never down it like it shouldn't have existed, but I didn't need it.
Yeah. So one thing that we're learning through these conversations, though, is wrestling has been like a bag of Skittles. There's a lot of different flavors in there. It's all over the place, and you can definitely look in there and find something you like.
Absolutely.
And the whole game may not be your cup of tea, but at least you might find some flavors of tea that you might like.
And now we're back in the era where there's an alternative. If you're not loving everything you see, and if all you like is the Bloodline on WWE, then I advise you put a lot of time into a Collision and Rampage and that, and then just watch a little Bloodline stuff. Or vice versa. If you hate, if you miss CM Punk, well, maybe turn on WWE in 3 months. Apparently, he could be there, so you might not miss him for long. So
you never know.
Just keep your ear to the business. You never have to leave the business because something that you like is always either coming or it's there, and you just have to find it.
So, what styles of wrestling do you like? There's plenty of things to choose from. So reach out on our social media platforms. Let us know what style of wrestling kind of is your flavor of tea. What do you like to see? What do you not like to see?
Yeah.
What is it right now in the current product that you're like, man, I wish that would just go away?
Yeah. There's definitely some of that. I know a lot of you are right now saying Vince, but that's a different subject.
Yeah, Vince, you're going to have to kill that.
That's a different podcast.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Bookers Alliance podcast. We appreciate what you all have done for us. Keep on keeping on. And with that, we bid you adieu.
Peace.
Today's podcast was produced by SBP. You can find our podcast on all major podcast platforms. Also connect with us on our social media accounts. Search for the Bookers Alliance on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.